On page 7, they show a nice picture of a piano. There's different kinds of pianos. That's just a typical grand piano. Your piano may or may not look like that. If you have an electronic piano, it may or may not look like that. Some electronic pianos now, they have where it's shaped like a grand. Looks good. It's still an electronic piano. On page 8, they're showing the posture. And it's a good posture. The idea with the posture is sit up comfortably. Don't slouch. And the forearms, this part of the arm, is basically even with the ground, more or less. And you're comfortable. Your hands are comfortable. The idea isn't to curve the fingers. The idea is to relax and let the fingers curve on their own. The natural relaxed position of where the fingers curve is what you're after. Don't try and grab a ball or anything. Ugh. On page 9, they're showing you the finger numbers. Thumbs are 1, little fingers 5, and you can figure out the others. It comes in handy because a lot of times in music we're trying to figure out which finger should we use to play which note. And we'll go over that as we go through the book. Toward the bottom of the page, on page 9, they talk about rounded hand position and firm finger. The idea is just let the fingers curl naturally. That's as rounded as you need to go. There will be exceptions. There's time when you'll have to curl in, time when you'll spread out. But that's the good starting point. And firm fingers simply means you're not going to collapse this joint here. Don't collapse it down. Leave it there. Don't go boom each time, but leave it there where it stays bent just like that. On page 10, they talk about high and low and up and down and all that good stuff. If you just listen to the keys on a piano, the pitch gets higher. That's considered going up. You get to the high part, it's up here. Then down, and low's the other direction. And the low part's down here. Generally speaking, you'll do the high part with the right hand because it's closest to them, and the low part with the left hand is closest to. It makes sense. There are times when we're going to have exceptions to all of these, but we'll cover those when those times come. Then soft and loud on piano, on keyboard I should say. We use a lot of Italian words in music. The idea is that by having one standard language, so to speak, then no matter what language you speak, you'll understand what the music is saying. Italy was really important in the development of music over the hundreds of years, so we tend to use Italian words. Lots of composers use other words. They have French words, English words, German words, whatever. You'll find others in there, but most of the time we use Italian. So we'll learn a little bit of Italian, and I don't speak Italian, so this will be interesting. But the bottom part of page 10, they have a P for piano and F for forte. Piano, Italian word means soft, and forte as an Italian word means loud. Now we have a little problem there in that there's no set value for these. So if you're the kind of person who has to have it exactly a certain way, you are going to probably struggle in music because music doesn't want to be tied down to a certain way. It's free. So it's a range. It depends on your situation, the room you're in, the piano you're on, playing, but outside, inside. Loud could be soft in some areas, or soft could be loud in other areas. It depends on the situation. So in the videos, I say you're going to have to decide in your situation where you are what loud and soft are. Then on top of that, the electronics that I'm using to record this want to even out the volume. They don't like louds and softs too much. So I have to exaggerate them to get them to come out, and it sounds silly here when I do that, but it comes out on the video better. If I play it where it sounds decent here, then it all sounds about the same on the video. Just pretend that I'm playing loud when it says loud, and I'm playing soft when it plays okay. Page 11, then they start getting into playing stuff. Here, I'll let you read that stuff. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. So let's jump over to page 14. And page 14, they're introducing rhythm. You see, when you play notes, some notes are short and some notes are long, and there's a combination of this going on. Well, that's rhythm. They show a picture of a metronome. That's just one of the metronomes. There's a lot of different metronomes. I use a lot of different metronomes in here, and the metronome just gives you a chance to keep a pace. But you have to know how to use the metronome. It's not simply a matter of turning it on and trying to follow it. So I may someday, if I haven't yet, give a lesson on how to use a metronome. Toward the bottom of the page on page 14, they're giving you different kinds of notes. You'll need to know these from now on. Music notation, this stuff I'm presenting here, is stuff you're going to have to remember forever. You can't just study for a test and then once the test is over you can forget it. No, you got to remember it from now on. Lots of review, but I'll talk about these things quite a bit. Anyway, for the notes, the first one is shown there as a quarter note. They say count one. Well, forget the one for right now. Just we'll pretend it gets one count. Doesn't always get one count though. We have to have something else to tell us that. But right now we're just going to pretend a quarter note gets one count. So if I'm just beating like in a metronome, boom, 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 then a quarter note gets a boom, boom, quarter note, quarter note, quarter note. So if I play a key on the piano, any key, doesn't matter, and I have a metronome here with the beats, I play quarter notes, each one. May not be exact, but it's close. Then a half note, well, if you take a quarter and a quarter together, it's a half. 2 quarters make a half. You can think fractions on this. 2 quarters. A half note's the same as 2 beats then. So it would hold it down for 2 beats. It's longer. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It just lasts longer. Then they show a dotted quarter or dotted half note, excuse me. That's a half note with a dot behind it. Dotted half note, get it? Okay. For now, just remember, a dotted half note is the same as 3 quarter notes. And that's always true. You can rely on that. 3 quarter notes. So if you know how many beats a quarter note gets, a dotted half note gets 3 of those. Here we're just saying 3 beats for it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Get the idea? It lasts longer. And then the last one is the open circle. That's a whole note. That's the same as 4 quarter notes. So it would last for 4 beats. Long one, huh? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You get the idea? Sometimes it's easier to imagine these notes going the other way. So I take a whole, or a whole note. If I divide a whole in half, I get 2 halves, or 2 half notes. If I take a half note and cut it in half, I get 2 quarters, 2 quarter notes. And you can keep dividing to 8th, 16th, 32nd, 64th, 128th, blah, blah, blah. We don't use all those notes, but that's how it works. It's just a division of 2. Don't make it complicated. It really isn't. It's just a division of 2 for each one. Now on page 16, they're introducing you to the white keys on the piano because we have white and black. Yes, you need to memorize these, but there's only 7 of them to memorize because they repeat over and over and over. To find what the name of a white key is, we look at the black keys, and it's a circle. To know what the name of a black key is, we need to look at the white keys. That makes no sense at all, does it? Welcome to music. It's out the alphabet. The notes are A through G. We don't have an H, so it's the 7 letters, A through G. You just need to memorize. Some people will put stickers on there to help them remember what the names of the keys. If you need stickers, fine, it's up to you. It's a personal thing. I never use stickers or any guide to help. I just had to memorize them. You see, most books, they'll just introduce 1 or 2 at a time. It's up to you. You can take it 1 or 2 at a time if you want, but you need to know what they are. And since A is the first letter of the alphabet, we'll start with an A. So on the keyboard, you'll notice the black keys are in groups of 3 and 2. They repeat. So we're really only looking at like one group of here or here. I don't care which groups you're looking at. You're looking at 7 notes total. The A is the upper middle of a group of 3. So let's go to a group of 3. And in that group of 3, the white keys, there's 2 middle notes. 2 of them. A lower middle and an upper middle. The A is the upper middle of a group of 3. We have a lot of A's on the keyboard. A. They're all over the place. As far as which A you play, that's where the music comes in. Don't worry about the music right now. We're just dealing with the keyboard. Just know that is an A. Well, it goes up the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Because the next note is an A again. So these 7 letters, A, and then it just repeats. So a B is at the top of a group of 3. A C is at the bottom of a group of 2. A D is in between a group of 2. And E is at the top. F is at the bottom of a group of 3. And then G is the lower middle. Technically, it's how it would be. Again, how you go about memorizing these is up to you. I don't really think you need to know them all right now. Learn them as you're using them in the books, in the lessons. But you do need to know them. And if you're using stickers, that's fine for a while, but the time will come where I'll tell you, take off the stickers. It's time to take them off. You need to be able to look at a key on a piano and instantly know what the name of the key is. Maybe not right now, but eventually you're going to need to know that. They're showing on page 17 C, D, and E on the piano. C, D, and E are these. They surround a group of 2. C is at the lower middle. Okay. These notes. And the written notes that they have in there, that confuses me. Just think C, D, E, and just find them all. C, D, E, C, D, E, C, D, E, C, D, E. The way they're written, all grouped together, you'd play them at the same time. Well, I need more coffee for that. I'd do them one at a time. It sounds better. Whatever. C, D, and E. On page 18, they give you an interval thingy. What's an interval? Oh, they're throwing a lot of theory at you right now. All right, well, we'll talk about it as we go through the book anyway. An interval, simply put, is the distance between any 2 notes. Could be notes in the music, could be keys on the keyboard, doesn't matter. The interval is the distance between them. To find out what the interval is, you simply count up. That's it. That's as complicated as it. Actually, there's a little more to it, but let's stick with this. And the note you're on, the starting note, is 1. Don't start with 0. We don't use 0 in music. So let's say I have 2 notes. I have this note, that's a G, and I have this note, that's an E. I want to know the distance between them, the interval. I count up with G is 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That is an interval of a 13th. Usually with smaller intervals, like they're doing these intervals. What's that interval? Well, it's a 1, 2, 3. It's an interval of a third. Thirds are used a lot. Our actual harmony in the Western harmony is based on thirds pretty much. It's every other note. They're all thirds. You can get them at the same time. You can get them one after another. Or, doesn't matter. It's still the distance between the notes is a third. They're saying if they're played at the same time, it's a blocked. And if they're played any other time, like not at the same time, it's broken. There are better terms for that, but I'm throwing so much at you, we'll do that later. Then they give some warm-ups. Good luck. Warm up. This stage, I don't see any point in warm-ups. Later on, when you're really getting into it, it's good to get warmed up, to get the fingers and the muscles and everything kind of warmed up in the mental in there before you start working on pieces. But right now, I consider warm-ups just another excuse to play notes, but that's all right. There's nothing wrong. You want to do warm-ups, go ahead. I just think they're really unnecessary at this point. Now, on page 19, if you want to do that merrily we roll along thing, you're simply reading finger numbers. And I very much oppose to reading finger numbers. Faber seems to think they're great, and they defend them. I disagree with them. because when you start moving around, you got to know what the notes are. You got to read the notes. So I encourage you from the beginning to read notes. But if you want to do merrily roll along, you go right ahead. Just play the finger numbers. Start on an E. They give you the name of the note inside the middle of the note. No? That's just the way this publisher does it. Normally you don't get the name of the note in the middle of it, but it's just any E, doesn't matter what it is. You put third finger on the E. That puts your hand in this position, and you're just using those 2, 1, and then 1 and 3 together. And then you add in the rhythm, the counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2. See, the half notes are held longer. And then the same thing with the left hand for the second line. Then on page 20, they get you the other 4 notes, the F through the A, B, these notes. Because we had these, now they're introducing these, and that would do all 7 of them. We're going C to C here, but it doesn't matter if you go A to G or C to C. The point is there are 7 notes. 7 letters in the alphabet, 7 notes. Here they're introducing you to the notes around the group of 3. I'll leave it to you to learn them, memorize them, whatever. At the bottom of the page they talk a little bit about transposing. I'll talk a little more about transposing later. It's simply where you're taking the notes in the music where they're written and you're playing them somewhere else. That's transposing. Page 21, introducing you to what's known as a measure. A measure is also known as a bar. It depends on what country you're from. They say it is a group of beats. I disagree. That's kind of misleading in my opinion. Look at Merrily We Roll Along. You see every once in a while there's a vertical line, and they've labeled it bar line. Well, that's also known as a measure line. See, measure and bar are interchangeable. I usually call them bar lines because I'm lazy and measure is too long a word to say. The point is that the distance between these vertical lines, the space, is called a measure or a bar. And it'll have a certain number of counts in it, a certain number of beats in it. That's what they're saying. And while I'm here, I just as well point out, if you look at Merrily We Roll Along here, on the end of the second line, you see a thin and thick bar line together. That's the musical symbol for the end of a piece. So if you're writing out music, when you get to the end of it, wherever it ends, you put in a thin and thick bar line. That means, oh, we're done. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be at the bottom, because a piece could end anywhere, and we'll get to that. For now, we're just going to play straight through the pieces, so it'll always be at the bottom. On page 22, they introduce you to, at the top of the page, a second, an interval of a second. Well, I already told you how to count intervals, so they can do their intervals of seconds, thirds, and all they want to. Just in my mind, if you can count them, that's close enough. Now, we'll get more into them when we get into the written music and how to identify them in the written music more easily. Then in the middle of the page, they introduce a scale. Boy, they're sure doing a lot of stuff. A scale is simply a set pattern of whole steps and half steps. Well, that means absolutely nothing if you don't understand what a whole step and half step is. For now, just keep in mind a scale is letter to letter, and we'll get into more depth about exactly what notes are involved a little later on. I think it's a little early to be introducing a scale, although they are limiting it more or less to a pentascale. Penta means 5 fingers, so a pentascale is a 5-note scale. Take C, here it's C, and I hear these 5 notes, that would be a pentascale. And it's handy because when you put your hand on the keyboard, every finger can be on a note. So we use a lot of pentascales. As long as you know what a pentascale is. It's just a 5-note scale. Notes are next to each other, more or less. And it just fits a 5-finger position really well. That's all. Page 23, they introduce the interval of a third. That's nice. And look at the bottom of page 23. I missed it because it's at the bottom of page 22 also. You see a thin and thick bar line with 2 dots. That's another musical symbol. Now, that is called a repeat sign. It simply means, for now, it means go back to the beginning and play it all again. Repeat it. I'll adjust that meaning later. Right now, just go to the beginning and play it all again. That's good enough. They talk a little bit about the damper pedal at the bottom of page 23. I would encourage you, stay away from it for now. That people misuse that pedal. They don't understand it. So let's just don't use it. You don't need it. It's fine. We'll talk about it when the time comes. On page 24, they talk about musical form. All right, fine. We'll talk a little bit about form. You see, in a book, you can have chapters to a book. Well, in a piece of music, you can have sections. They're similar to chapters in a book. Generally, the music in a section, the melody will be different than a different section. Or there'll be something about it where it makes sense to group that section as a whole, and then another section as another whole, and it could be any number of sections. And sections can repeat. And we label the sections by the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, whatever, with some little numbers sometimes, A1 or A2 or whatever. And they explain a little bit up there. Just know they're there. There's musical forms. We'll get more into it when it becomes important. Why do we need the form? Why do we need to consider a form? What? We'll get that later. Just know they exist for now. On page 26, on a 3-minute technique, they're giving you the dynamic mark. Dynamics is louds and softs. You've already had P and F, and now they introduce MF. MF, well, F is forte, so the M is mezzo, or moderate. Moderately loud, medium loud, sort of loud. Not loud, sort of loud. And yes, there's going to be an MP later. That's okay. Just know what it is. You're going to have to start to decide loud is loud and moderately loud is not quite as loud. And on page 27, it gives some music theory to review things. We've talked about this stuff. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me. Page 28, now we're getting into the printed music. This is what I've been waiting for. This is where I normally start the lessons. So I'll talk about the printed music and all these symbols in the next lesson, because you've had enough for this lesson. It's good enough. This lesson is lasting forever. You'll get bored. I get bored. Everybody's bored. Blah. So we'll go to the next lesson and start talking about all these symbols.